The great pleasure to introduce to you the incoming artistic director, Mike Payette of Montreal, who will be joining us in July and September as he begins his new career at the Tarragon Theatre. And when I first heard about Mike coming in, I was very pleased to hear that it was him. I didn't know who would be doing it. It's a whole other thing that the board does. But I was very happy, very pleased, and so it's great to talk to you, Mike, and uh, and welcome.
Thank you, Richard. How are you feeling as the outgoing artistic director of Tarragon after all this time? How are you feeling at this point in time? It's
I'm
almost we're like a month in, right? A month to go or so, just over a month left.
about 6 weeks, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm feeling very good about it. This has been a long-term planning. I kind of chose the year about 2 years ago, and had been ramping up towards that. Of course, COVID changed a lot of things, but it wasn't. The job is sailing, right? The
Right.
winds are always changing, the water's always changing, the tide's always changing, and you got to play it as it goes. And this is the year that we play this way, or the last year and a half. So
Mhm.
people say you must be very disappointed. In some ways, I am, but that I didn't get to do all the shows I want to do. But we'll be doing some of them next season, and so I'm okay. I'm okay about it.
All right.
It's good that the theater renews and brings in someone new and brings in new audiences, and so I'm very excited about that for the theater.
I'm leaving a company, it's a theater for young audiences, company called Geordie Theater in Montreal. And if there's one thing that has been in our vocabulary for over a year. It's like creating option B, C, D, E, and F, which is, obviously the worst at using like a swear word.
Yeah.
It's like, F, whatever, it's done kind of thing. But thankfully, having not going into
Yeah.
scenario F, I'm excited about what next season is going to bring, live, hybrid, whatever,
Yeah.
which is going to be, revealed soon. It's going to be it's going to be an interesting time as we look to what reinvigorating audiences back into our theater, right?
Yes, we want to make sure people are very comfortable coming back, and it looks like so far. It looks like everybody needs to make sure they have both vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
and so that their fellow audiences member feel comfortable, and people are in a room together. I don't know whether they'll put any limits on the audience, and we'll have to factor that in, and you'll be factoring that in. So there'll be that concern, but we want to make sure that people also just have the confidence
Yeah.
of their vaccine and the virus and all the variants and all that kind of stuff, so that they feel comfortable. They can actually watch a play and not be in a panic. They may be wearing masks. They may not be wearing masks. We'll see. We'll see as this evolves and the data evolves. And
Richard.
no, I wanted to ask you about your origins. Are you from Montreal?
Born and raised in Montreal, based here for the entirety of my life. Um, yeah, so I love Montreal. I do. We have a beautiful cultural backdrop. There's lots of complications, like social complications within Quebec, but in terms of a city, Montreal is such a beautiful city, right? And you know, I joke around that I was born and bred in NDG in Notre Dame de Grace,
Yeah.
which is sort of
Yeah.
in the west part of Montreal, of the greater Montreal area. And I've hopped around all of the places that I've lived. I think it's like the span of a 16 block radius within NDG, but but always in the same borough, but
Yeah.
hopping around. Anyway, yeah, NDG has been my home. Montreal has been my home. I started out, as media has already released, but folks will already know that I started out really young as an actor. I was immersed in, or introduced to theater very, very young. Actually, with the company that I run now, Geordie Theater, they had come to my school and sort of sparked this imagination of possibility and escape in some places, because I was a kid. I was a pretty isolated kid, pretty quiet kid, wanting to find my own voice, and then theater was introduced, and then the rest is history. Went on to direct from a very early age. started writing as a teen, started mentorship opportunities, workshopping, all of that happened really, really early. And sort of led me to where I am now and running Geordie. I've run a company that I created called Tableau Theater, which is now just over 15 years old now. I'm no longer with the
Oh, yeah.
company, but
Right.
there's been a lot of tie-in actually between that company and Tarragon. The mandate of Tableau Theater between myself and my company partner Mathieu Murphy-Perron, we wanted to bring English language premieres of great Canadian work in Montreal. We were recognizing that there was a dearth of those, of that work, of that repertoire being presented on our main stages here in the city, and so we charged ourselves with bringing that forward. And so, you know, we've done the English premieres of Tremblay works. We've brought Judith Thompson into the fold. We brought Lorena Gale into the fold. The Tarragon relationship. Certainly, there's one there with Michel Tremblay and with Bill
Yeah.
Glasgow from
Yes,
before.
indeed.
So one of the productions that we did was actually the English language premiere of Hosanna, which hadn't been done, oddly enough, in Quebec.
Wow.
We did that in 2015. Yeah, and here we are now. But after 20 odd years in this work, starting again as a kid and venturing into artistic leadership pretty early on in my 20s and 30s, it's I'm so looking forward to what the next chapter brings with Tarragon, right? And meeting the audience,
Yeah.
the audiences that have already made a home with Tarragon, and the audiences that have yet to make a home, inviting them into the fold and engaging with the artistic community, which is so vibrant. Toronto is such a beautiful city. I've worked in Toronto. I've never been based there, but I'm really, really, looking forward to cementing myself and just being immersed by the beautiful backdrop of what Toronto does.
And one
Yeah.
of the new things you do with Geordie, what is it? Your Geordie is focused on a young audience?
Yeah, that's right. So Geordie Theater, it's 40. This is actually the 40th milestone year. So there's the Tarragon milestone year happening,
Yeah.
and then there's the Geordie milestone year happening. Yeah, we're the Geordie is the largest English language theater for young audiences company in Quebec. We have a very wide reach with our touring and our main stages. We reach about 40,000 young people every single year, and with our tour and our main stage productions here in Montreal. We have something called the longest tour, called the Two Play Tour, which is the longest tour in Canada that spans 7 months, 8 months every single year, and hits all of Eastern Canada, parts of the Maritimes, all of Quebec, many of the isolated and remote marginalized communities in Quebec up north, and parts of Ontario as well. So, in the span of the 40-year history, and it was founded by Elsa Bolam, who has the Order of Canada, and is a great contributor to
I know.
Canadian theater,
Yeah.
right? You know Elsa, right?
She's great. Did a
Yeah,
remarkable job, really,
she
remarkable
she
job.
she really is, like her, along with Morris Podbury, who founded or co-founded the Centaur Theater. They're really like the mom and pop of English Montreal theater, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so she created Geordie to give more opportunities for artists to engage with young people, and here we are. We've managed to pivot. I hate the word, but pivot nicely during this time, and embracing live streaming capacities to keep our tour and our accessibility alive during this. And yeah, it's a very magical company, I have to say. It's what Geordie does in terms of inspiring the next generation and the adults in their lives is pretty profound, and it's something I will absolutely remember for the rest of my life. I'm sure you get this question a lot, right? But what how are you gonna are you built these relationships with the Tarragon audience, right, and with the community, and so what does that next chapter look like for you? Are you excited by it? Is it a big question mark?
I think it's really more a question mark, but what I'm interested is in pursuing the question mark, if you like. One of the things I have said is I'm kind of in this first time period for a while, I'm interested in doing nothing. I do miss classical work, and I am now sort of currently reading a lot of classics as in this transition. Um, Trying to find what to do with that, what that means to me now. I will always like working on a new Canadian play, but I don't want to. I mean, what's great is I'm not worried about the producing aspects of it, um, the the box office,
Yeah.
the fundraising, the administration, which preoccupies, as you know, Mike, a lot of your time and energy, and you'll find it even more so at the Tarragon because we do 7, 8 shows, we tour, we co-produce, we're very active across the country as well as locally, and it takes a lot of focus and takes a lot of time, and you're consumed by it.
Absolutely.
You're totally, utterly consumed by it. So
Absolutely.
having a little bit more life in my life is going to be really good.
But giving yourself that time to recoup, to recharge that creative part of you, like
Yeah.
to see where that artistic foundation can open up again, right? Because you have been with, the company for a hot minute now, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
generating a lot of great content, right? And so now, but it's always been associated with Tarragon, right?
Yeah.
With the company that you're running, and so now you get to look back at yourself. You get to actually reconnect with yourself, and so that's
Yeah.
got to be a little bit exciting, right?
You work for a lot of other people, right? And
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing to do. But now the kind of focus gets to go back to me in my terms of my own creativity. Even though I would tend to be an interpretive person, like a director interpretive, I'm a bit of an auteurist,
Mm.
but not in the way other directors are. I kind of do work with the text more so, but I'm working on a couple of things where I'm taking classical text and breaking it down and being a little more arturist about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, but really, I have not. I mean, I've been serving the new play,
Mhm.
and it's now time to look at my own work, I think, and look at my own ideas and see where I can take that further.
What is your connection to the classics? Because you've mentioned, yeah, that you're going back to them, and you've done a number of adaptations of, a lot of Greek work in particular. So
Yes.
what is it that draws you to that work now?
I love the way those stories or that writing um, resonates against today. Now, not all classics should be done all the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you can kind of not, we must choose wisely when it's ready to do this particular themes in this particular play about um, what's being addressed. So you have to think about where you are. So it's still a very much a new thing,
Yep.
and when you do a classic, it's almost new again.
Right.
If and you should try and make it new again. Even if you did a very traditional production, it's new again because the time has changed, and you want to reach those themes into the time. So
Right.
the fact that these have some, they're both, I suppose, universal values and relative values in tandem. So there's kind of a larger view of the world and human behavior in many of those works. And at the same time, you want to find the relativity to the time you're in, which means you direct it or fashion it in such a way that it suits the times. I just will say one thing about the classics: they are great plays, and they're great plays, but because, to my mind, the great plays embrace contradiction
Hmm. I understand that.
and complexity, and so to try to reach to the understanding the human experience or representing the human experience, whether you do it in a period or you do update it to now or you alter it, is to reach to some kind of sense of the perception of that particular writer's complexity. And so, in some way, we want to make Sophocles our our contemporary.
Right. I understand that.
So
I
that's
totally
that's
understand.
part of the reason why I'm drawn to it, and allows me to do my work versus maybe in working on a new play. You're tending to be, as you well know, you're working on the new play. You're trying to make
Right.
that thing possible, and that takes the energy, the creativity, the input to make the play important. I always love doing the second production of a new play that I've worked on because I finally go, oh yeah, I need to make my work whole, which I didn't last time, but now I can in the
Yeah.
second production, or there's one that goes on the road,
Yeah.
or one another theater if I'm so lucky to do that.
I think that's such an awesome gift when that happens, right? Because it doesn't happen all the time, right?
Right.
So when
Yeah.
you get that second go, you're like, okay, what I for me, I'm rarely satisfied in terms of like there's always something to work on, right? There's always something that whether you call it unfinished or you're like, oh, there's this one moment would have been like, oh, it would have brought everything together, or this particular staging would have really put it all together, but oh, it could, it didn't end up happening. There's always that other opportunity. So when you do have that, such a reward. It's such a reward. Um, I,
Absolutely.
I I can absolutely agree to that. And yeah, to your point, it allows you to be the director again, like the artist again, as opposed to um, uh, well, building from scratch. Essentially within that first production, right? You're no longer building in that same way. You're finessing. You're sort of putting that nice shine, that gleam on it, so that in that second go, which you
Yeah.
didn't necessarily have a chance
All
to.
those moments that pass by, when you're watching the archival tape before you redirect, you go, "Oh, I missed that completely. Oh, that needs to be sharpened up. That needs to be further developed. That kind of stuff." But yeah, I think just to go back to table d'hôte, you worked on a lot of Canadian classics. It turns out, I think now, as I think of it now, because those have been done, you've got to do them again. So in a way, you have a deeper experience of the Canadian classic in our country than I have because I didn't do. I did the new play, but I didn't really do Tremblay again. I've only done one Tremblay, but I
Yeah,
only because I was a Tarragon. I think really, not if I'd been on my own.
yeah.
And you've done a lot of digging that way into shows that, so you've got to see them again.
Well, yeah, and that was what a great thing, especially because I was quite young when I co-founded Tableau, and so a lot of the association with the Canadian canon or the Canadian repertoire, let's say, or the classic Canadian repertoire, which is a funny word considering how young Canadian theater really is, but nevertheless, yeah, and bringing them into the Montreal ecology because there was a lack, right? Again, there was a lack of that kind of representation of like what are the stories that are coming out of our own, our land, and what does the Canadian voice actually look like? So yes, there were the classics, like again, like the Joan McLeods, or or the even the Panaches and the Judith Thompsons. Those names have become so synonymous in other parts of the country. We know who these people are, but we don't, regardless of it, like outside of a training sense, we don't really hear those names in the same way here in Montreal, and mainly because again, English Montreal is a minority language community, right? And so you can see translations of them happening, but not necessarily done in English. So
Right.
yeah, I remember, the last show that I directed for Tableau while I was the AD was a Joan McLeod show. It was one that Tarragon had done.
Well, which one?
It was another home invasion,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think y'all had done it. Was it 2009? I want to say,
Uh, you
or a little
know,
bit later.
so many years, I can't remember.
I'm like totally testing you. When did you do this play? Give me
Yeah.
the date. Give me the time.
Also, which city too? Because they went on tour, so there was two casts in the end, and
Right.
the show, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But a host of those plays, that had made their premiere at Tarragon, were developed with Tarragon, and then have gone on to do life. And in many of those cases, they were making their Montreal home with Tableau, um, which is which is absolutely great. Do you remember a development process of any of those plays that you have worked on that have contributed to the Canadian repertoire in not unlike these, like in Aaron Shields, for instance, and If We Were Birds. Can you think of um, a process that was incredibly gratifying, knowing that there was continued life? Like, is there that one show, or there could be a host of shows, but can you think of one in particular?
Well, the process of making a play is, or working on a play, a new play, is so individual to the playwright. Uh, it feels like whether it actually went on or not, that it's unique for sure in terms of how you work on that play and with that playwright. Where there a process, it's just so unique, the process is, and something will that you work on. I with Scorched, it was a very personal project with me, although it was a play that was done, and we did the English version and the English translation, which has its own work, and we worked on it a bit more to sharpen it down. It's interesting culturally in the Quebecois theater and the French theater how time works differently than in the English theater, and in terms of what you want to achieve with language. And in French they seem to take longer to say one thing, and sometimes there's a lot of repetition in that. And in English, it's a little more sharper in terms of, you say it once, you got it, right? And you don't need to repeat it. But although sometimes culturally you do need to repeat it because you're driving the point home because no one's listening to you, right? You're not heard. So that was a fantastic experience. But that was actually, I think, me actually having a very personal relationship to that play that astounded me as I was at that point in my life, and then coming upon that play further astounded me. And there was a kind of moments of recognition. And even as I worked on the play, I began to, there were discoveries I made about what the play is asking of you and asking of an audience that I was profoundly moved by and surprised by, and the challenge of it. So that was certainly a very interesting one. And It's All True was very much so much about the theater and the battle within the theater. So it's Orson Welles, the director, and there's a playwright, and there's the producer, and there's an actor on stage, and it's two actors on stage, and a stage manager, and the two actors are in a bit of a love story, and off stage as well as on stage, and it was like a bit of a story of our lives, that fighting for trying to get the play right in difficult conditions, the play being closed down by the government, no money, running out of money, and trying to find what is the amore of the theater again. And so it was a very fantastic play to do, but it was also the play on the day before opening. We used to open on a Tuesday at the Tarragon. This was before I was the artistic director. It was when Nestor Angel and Tarragon were doing, Nestor Angel would be my company, and Tarragon were doing co-pro. And so on the Sunday I said, or Saturday night in preview, I said, Jason, it's not ending. He didn't feel like it was ending. He said, I'm going to give you a new final speech for the guys playing Orson Welles, Victor Manis, to say. And I said, okay, great. Can I get it Sunday morning? So he worked on it all night. Can I get it Sunday morning? Let me read it. We're not giving it to Victor for the Sunday afternoon preview because it'll just confound him.
Yeah, of course.
Right after that preview, there's a note session or a rehearsal. And you don't really want to put the actors through a Sunday night rehearsal after a week of previews. But we did it, and I did it, and we put it.
You did it anyway.
I did it anyway. Right? And I gave him the speech. He worked on it, and then he had the day off. Worked on it some more, poor guy. And we rehearsed it Tuesday afternoon, and we put it in for opening night Tuesday night. It was one of the reasons why I changed opening night from Tuesday to Wednesday.
Right. Because of this story.
Give them a little warm up, right? When they come back after the day off, they need to kind of warm up to the play again. And so that was one of my profound changes at the Tarragon, was to move Wednesday to opening night. Those shows that are very personal are
Yeah.
and yet not. You reflect on your life in them have always been the very moving pieces. Another home invasion um, was my mother going to take care of her in a home, and she had Alzheimer's, a kind of Alzheimer's, a deteriorating condition, and walking into that and seeing, and I don't know how you directed it, but I just put her in a chair and she just talked, and and I saw my mother in the home and sitting in the chair all day, and she wouldn't move from that chair. And I don't know what was going on in her mind, and but she never moved off that chair. And I went, well, that's what we're gonna stage that play. I'm not moving you. I said to poor Nikki Lipman, I said, you're not gonna move. You're barely gonna. You might get up once, which we got up once.
Yeah.
Kind of shift or change to work your bones, or exercise your bones, and back down to the chair because that's all you could really cope with. And then you saw how frail this person was, coping with her husband as a a caregiver,
As a
late,
caregiver.
right? Yeah, and not fair that she was doing that with such a meager physicality, but she was still there and still doing it, and
Yeah.
found the energy, found the muscular power. So I think that's, when you find those plays that really connect to your personal life, that's always fascinating.
Hmm. I hear that. I hear that. For what it's worth, yeah, our actor, who's Dina Aziz, um,
Yeah, yeah,
she yeah, she was we created this logic in terms of when this map, the storyboard, as you will, in terms of when she would be seated versus when she would have that strength to stand and go to the lip. It was like a sort of raised platform that we created with a chair on top, and
yeah.
so it made it feel as though she was floating in this
Right.
void, right? And
Yeah.
so when could she go close? And yeah, I remember another home invasion being quite compelling because my mom also, what was at that particular time. She's better now, but like there was that
Right.
moment of that scary moment that that a child doesn't want to, that a child will endure at some point. But yeah, watching the deterioration or the delusion, the hallucination that my mom was experiencing during that time, and doing another home invasion and not developing it, but thank you for developing it, was just it just made it that much more. You're right, that much more personal, that much more profound.
Yeah.
Um, as a director in in offering that story, um, I think I sometimes think of that story of like what would it look like now? Like what would the like in COVID speak, with all of the mess that was happening with our our healthcare, our long-term healthcare system, the showing of that, the the injustice for our
Yeah.
seniors, to
Yeah.
see like how that would resonate now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard, you have such a, like I said in the beginning, a nice strong connection to your audience, loyal patrons, that have been with you, you know, rode the waves along with you throughout your tenure. And so this year, being your last, but you programming the next season, can you talk a little bit about the pay what you can, um, offer that Tarragon is making, and why it's so important to keep that connection between the theater and our theater goers, and reinvigorating what you said before in relation to the play, the amore of theater again. Can you speak a little bit about the pay what you can?
Well, it really started with the artists that I knew who had lost so much work, and that some were living off CERB, some were living off gigs, little gigs here and there, some on savings, teaching, doing online teaching. I think a lot of people turned to. They needed money. They needed money, and they could no longer afford a subscription. Could no longer, yeah, come to the theater. single ticket sale, come once or come many times, that kind of thing wasn't happening for a lot of people. And I was, not that I'm aware of the incomes of our subscribers really, but it's varied, and some people are on pensions, and some people are have incomes or have lost their work. There's people on staff whose partners have lost work, and they can't, suddenly their income in the theater is hard to live by. And I just felt that everybody needed equal access to the theater, and the only way to understand that is to let them determine what they can pay, and that the theater should be as wide open as possible to everybody. There's no judgment if you can't pay. And we've put a little thing in the program about, you'd like to help out, but you can't this time, but take it anyways. Pay zero. It's okay to have a $0 subscription, because we have to gift back to our audience. We have to give back a year of pleasure, or of entertainment, of joy, of going out and not being constrained by the change in your life and the change in your income. And so that kind of accessibility, equal access for people, letting them make that decision too, I think is also very important. And no shame if you only want to pay $20 for a subscription, or zero, or 350. There's no difference in who's important to us. Everyone is important to us, and everybody needs to, as many people as possible, need to come to the Tarragon if they so wish. We have to make a very special effort and gift back to the larger, our specific Tarragon subscriber audience, and our artist audience, and the general audience, that the theater is open to you. It's your gift for you. You've paid for it through your taxes. Your taxes support the arts councils. The arts councils support us. And now it's your time to get some reward, and not cost you to go out again for a while. Prices will restore, the economy will restore, things will get better, fingers crossed. And so we need to make a gift of this, in a sense.
Yep. Yep. Equal access, no shame, and giving a gift. It's an exciting formula, especially it's an exciting formula. I'm excited by the idea, and I really hope that those who are listening, for instance, to this combo, really take advantage of that, because it is something to take advantage of, especially as we look at this transition. Like, there's so many transitions happening, right, Richard? But there's, like, certainly in terms of the physical theater of Tarragon, there's our transition, within the role. There's the transition of audience being welcomed back. There's the transition of artists being able to work to the scale that they might have been working before. Like, so many things are. There's the transition of the sector, trying to get into this recovery place that we're not quite there yet. We're still at a place of reaction, but we're at the tail end of that reaction as we start to again transition into this new phase. So I love this initiative. I hope it's something that we can honor in one way, shape, or form for the future, but certainly in the immediate, as we are all building this transition, pay what you can. Yeah, I love that. No shame, equal access. This is great, Richard.
So can I ask you a question now?
Yes.
And it is, as you step into the role, what have you been thinking about, without holding you to it? Absolutely not. Without holding anything to it, and it may be too soon a question to answer, but of course, what has been some of the thoughts that you've had about where you want to take the Tarragon?
It's too soon, but it's never soon enough, right? in terms of that thinking. Well, there's a myriad of things, and what I can share is that I'm look I'm looking at what dramaturgy and development, how that's investigated. So so we know that there's this history, this legacy within Tarragon as the home for the playwright. That's how it's been deemed and lauded for. And I want to open what that concept of playwright and creation looks like specifically. The creators of stories, knowing that there are multiple forms of creation, right? That are sometimes outside of the theater, but can influence the theater just the same, right?
Mhm.
So establishing those processes or honoring those processes for those creators to explore through whatever discipline they come in, but through the platform of theater and make that hybrid. That's the kind of support I want to give, right? So it's not just the home for the playwright, it's the home for the creator, which absolutely encompasses the playwright, but
Yeah.
it also encompasses the right. So looking at what that kind of model looks like, other I know you have worked so tirelessly with your dramaturgical brain, right? And so as you're a dramaturgical director, which is what has gotten Tarragon to this particular time. But I also want to look at how multiple dramaturgical voices influence the process, right? And so, and to share that dialogue of a piece. A piece might have, who knows, this is too early to tell, but depending on the creator, depending on the idea, there might be a series of dramaturgs, right? There could be one that is related to this, there could be one that's related to form, and then that becomes a hybrid of conversation all about one piece, going from idea, from seed
Right.
to execute.
Right.
I also, you know, um, we'll see how this pans out. But I also, how do I foster companies, collectives, groups, right? The mentorship is quite important to me, as I know it's important to you, and it's important to Tarragon. So those companies, those small collectives or small companies that are just starting, that have these great ideas, but not necessarily the resources to support, and perhaps would benefit from some sort of residency. So like those how to create that mechanism for not just certainly we'll keep the individual artist residency, but how can we offer
Mhm.
that to a company that can be with Tarragon for a number of years, and then who knows if there's a presentation at the end, an actual producing of their work.
I think it's a really good idea, and it would open up the theater to some new thinking, and I think that's very, very, very important. So that's really so. Bravo, go for it.
Thank you, Richard. And I think I love the idea of thinking of Tarragon as Canada's neighborhood theater. That, and what, like a neighborhood, it is entirely eclectic. It is there are all walks of life, all kinds of stories, and for there to be a home to nest all of these or as many voices, all of these voices, all of these stories, all of these artistic forms, that's you know that's what Tarragon is. And so how can we bring that even further in terms of the scope, right? But I
Yes.
also, there are so many playwrights. And I think one of my first things going in, I haven't actually started, but I feel totally immersed in Tarragon. You and I have already spoken about like next
Yeah.
season, like some of the shows, and like I love all of that. Um, but again, transition, right? I come in September, and a little bit of transition time in July, where I want to know what the heartbeat of this of Tarragon, the heartbeat essentially being meeting the audience, right? Meeting the artists who have been so loyal to the company and are looking to continue those relationships. Like there's a lot of listening um, that I will be doing in my first months, because certainly there's going to be evolution. Certainly there will be shifts. We can always bank on that. We're not the same person, but we have, values, and we have integrity that you've brought to the company, and that I'll be bringing into the company. But none of that could happen without actually recognizing what the touchstone the touchstones are, right? And that is audience, artists, and the greater community. So I'm coming into somebody to a new home. I'm coming into the to a community that is welcoming me as a as opposed to me feeling as though I'm intruding. So as a guest into this community, I want to listen, and I'm looking forward to that. So that'll allow me to establish myself in the community after that, and then we can create those awesome changes. So um yeah, so those are the things that I'm thinking, like I can share right now. um
It sounds
uh
very wise, Mike. Very wise.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It really is.
I think there will be, because next season is yours again, and we are banking on being live, and I want to see how we can have those moments where we're also in either inside, outside the building, not necessarily seeing theater, but also sharing conversations about theater, like discourse, what is happening, hosting those sort of long table or uh, uh, focused talkbacks, that I know Tarragon has done as well. But how can we prolong that? How can we go more with that? So those are the things I'm looking forward to, Richard, that I can name. The other things I can't quite name.
Understood. Understood. Very well answered, and very thoughtful and wise. As I did that too. I did a lot of talking to everybody that was associated with the theater in whatever form or manner. Um, and but I think it's also great that you've done this and shared your thoughts with the audience now in this format. They're a very good audience.
Yeah.
They're sophisticated in that they know theater. They've been to a lot of theater, whether it's classical work or contemporary work or new play work, which is they're courageous in many ways because new plays are new plays. They're sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and they're generous because they're very supportive of the new play. We've been supported year after year, time after time, and that's a value I hope that continues on with you, that they're there for you, just and you can know that they're there for you to support you, because they kind of believe in what you do, and uh,
Absolutely.
and they're astute. They don't like everything, and they shouldn't, and I don't like everything, and you don't either, I'm sure. So
No.
they're astute and with a knowledge and appreciation of the art form and that particular art form of new stories. At the same time, they're very excited, I think, by hearing stories that are new to Canada, um, new to now, new this year, new whatever. They're there to listen to what's going on in our world now. And I've been very fortunate, and um, I'm hopefully able to pass on that fortune to you.
Thank you, Richard, so much. And looking forward to those conversations. I'm looking forward to meeting awesome audience. Um, and for charging our awesome audience, to extending a hand to those who hadn't necessarily seen theater or didn't know that theater was for them at this particular time.
Yeah.
Make that bridge, offer that hand, because now the impact of theater is huge, right? The importance, the necessity, the essentialness of theater at during this time is huge, and so we need our supporters. We need our audience members who have kept coming back, who recognize what Tarragon has done and what we'll continue to do to ensure that it becomes a cyclical, continued generational conversation and acknowledgement of theater's importance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Hey,
the audience
Richard.
will come back
Yeah.
in droves.
What's
Uh,
that?
the audience will come back in droves, and I hope the pay what you can subscription makes sure that everybody's part of the drove.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. I think Richard. It's lovely to chat with you. Been pretty rad, and I know that there's going to be more conversations to come. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to be tapping on your shoulder, knocking on your email
Good.
inbox
Understood.
door.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for this chat. It was great.
Wonderful talking to you, Mike.